And we're live. Welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Show. McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. Justin Taylor, JT Orange, and myself will have a lot of fun talking with our guest today, Adam Hutchison, injury analyst for 4 for 4. Uh, Thanks for coming on today, Adam. It was kind of last minute notice. I threw the call out there. I threw a Hail Mary last minute, and sure enough, boom, you agreed to come on. So you're stuck with me now. It is what it is.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, I didn't have anything going tonight, so yeah, I'm excited to talk some fantasy football.
Yeah, today we'll talk to Adam about the important midseason injuries that are hard enough to absorb by themselves, but having them fall right in the middle of all these bye weeks just makes things way more complicated. Getting as accurate as possible information right from the horse's mouth to give an educated opinion on how long your players will be out for, it's so important. For this week's and your current week's lineups, but it's also important for the rest of the season game plan. So, just a couple things about myself here. Halloween came and went, but when I got home from work, there were still about 8 30-pack full-size candy box left over from Halloween. We give out full-size candy bars. All these, they come in 30 packs, M&Ms, this and that. So we buy them every year, and there's all kind of assortments. We even have like little dog treats to give out, for the people, and beers and everything for the adults. And it just pepperonis. We got Miller Lights and Trulies for the adults, and there was hardly anybody showed up. It wasn't raining. It was like nice outside, but I don't know if you saw on TV or nothing like that. But in Plainfield, where I'm at now, there's a house that has the suspended girl from that Stranger Things show right by me, like probably a mile away. So I think everybody went and saw that. It was kind of like the thing to do for Halloween around here this time. So it was a madhouse. So I came home from work, and there was like probably I'm not gonna say 700, but 150 cars up and down the driveway of our subdivision. Everybody's walking over there. People are taking, their 4 wheelers and stuff, going to see this. And it got like 15 million likes and copies and stuff like that, or retweets, whatever, on YouTube and all the rest of social media stuff that I'm not on. But it was kind of a madhouse around here. So maybe that's where all the kids were at. But we have literally, there's like 10 boxes of stuff left, So, but it is what it is. Um, that's another reason I I don't know, the kids. It was kind of a bad year, but that's another reason I think Thanksgiving is the best holiday. It's all your families around. Everyone brings a dish, dessert, and you drink beer, wine, watch a football all day long. Nobody judge anyone for gifts. You're not waiting around for kids to show up or not show up. You're not taking 1,000 pictures with Santa. It's gluttony and sloth day all day long. Turkey bowl with it used to be my thing with my family. Now the kids do it. What do you guys think about? What's your favorite holiday? JT, go first.
Oh, I'm with you on Thanksgiving, man. I love Thanksgiving. Just sit around, relax. At the barbecue restaurant, we do big turkeys for everybody that morning. So I spend all day getting them ready. Day before everybody shows up, we sell them all that morning, and then I get to have the whole rest of the day off. Go hang out with the fam, and of course, football's on all day. Especially love the addition of the night game from a couple years ago. That's fantastic. When us being around here, my mom's family's from Michigan, so everybody's up to watch the Lions game, even though they usually get wrecked. But it's everybody's up to go to watch it. I love Thanksgiving too. Like you said, man, it's come when you can. Nobody has to be there exact specific time. If you don't go to one place in the morning, go to the other place in the afternoon, still leftover food. So I'm all in on football and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, everybody sits around on the couch anyway, so it's just an extra excuse to just. I turned the football games on, and I had a remote control from my dad at his house because he turns on stuff for the kids all the time, and I'm like, get out of here, we're watching game. I'm not watching.
Got to give the kids their own room, like a
Yeah,
basement somewhere, a side room. If
they
they
want to
want to
turn on.
watch something else, the only good thing is most kids have like phones now, so you're like, hey, watch YouTube on your phone, do something like that.
Yeah, beat it, nerds. Football time. How about you, Adam? What's your favorite holiday?
I mean, I think I got to go consensus Thanksgiving, and what's nice about it is sometimes you can make it kind of 2 for 1. Black Friday, you call off on Friday, like, hey, I don't think I'm going to make it into the office today. You can get that 2 for 1. So I might have to go with Thanksgiving as well.
It is awesome. No expectations. Nobody's like,
Yeah,
I already had these. You go out of your way to get like, some kind of like a sports thing or a jersey doesn't fit somebody. How to return this thing? What's going on? The kids don't like the gifts. Your nephews, you buy them something like trucks or fire trucks or whatever, and they're like, I already have this. You spend so much time doing it. Thanksgiving, you just show up with a dessert and some kind of cookies or something like that, whatever. Ham or turkey, whatever you're assigned to do. Show up and
hell yeah,
bam, everybody just eats and has a good time, and you spend time with the family, and it's all good. So
absolutely.
that is it. JT, anything new since our last show?
Oh man, just got murdered in fantasy this week all around. Oh, I took a beating across a million leagues, and I lost so many leagues by like 1 or 2 points, where I got zeros or like 1 point from like 3 different guys in my lineup. It was super frustrating, but I mean, you get these bye weeks, that happens, but it's just really annoying when you get guys that don't even give you anything. And of course, I got stuff from my complete garbage players that I had to throw in. They at least gave me 5 or 6 points. I'm like, oh, thank you, something. And then I get a big zero from George Pickens. My Seuss Scott Fishbowl, 1.3 points from Trevor Lawrence, I think, while Justin Fields scored 34 on my bench, and I lost by 1 to a guy that didn't even set his lineup. So it was a frustrating weekend, and then I finally have given up all hope on the Steelers and Colts. So now I'm just going to be happy and enjoy the rest of the year because I know they're both terrible, and I've lost all expectation of them being any good this year.
Adam, how about you? How did your I don't know how many leagues you're in and stuff like that, but how did your fantasy football leagues go? The dynasty redraft, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm in too many leagues. Hopefully, my wife doesn't watch this show because if she found out how many fantasy football leagues I was in, she'd probably kill me. But yeah, I actually had a different week. I'm in a couple dynasty leagues where I've been kind of struggling. It's been a productive struggle, and I had the opposite. Like I played a couple leagues where I scored the most points in the league, and I was playing a guy that scored like the second most points. So I had a pretty good week. I had a couple Tony Pollard lineups, a couple lineups of Christian McCaffrey, which obviously didn't hurt. And then I was fortunate enough that I had another guy on a bye in a Superflex league. So I played a lot of Justin Fields this week, and it was kind of by accident, but obviously he had a nice week as well.
Where do you live around, Adam?
I live in Jacksonville right now. I'm actually from the Chicagoland area. So you were talking about Plainfield. I heard about that Stranger Things fiasco, not to get off track, but like I heard some neighbors were like complaining about that because it was generating so much traffic, and they were upset in their subdivision. Because I saw it on Instagram, and it looked really cool. I don't know if you guys watch Stranger Things, but it was a pretty awesome replica and tribute to that show.
We did watch it, and the guy who lives right next door to that place was in my garage last weekend watching football and stuff, and he was kind of giving us a whole lowdown about how the next door neighbor went nuts. The next door neighbor was on vacation for 2 weeks, had no idea this thing was even going up. Then this guy put all this stuff up, and next thing you know, there's 400 people a night on his grass, on his driveway, this and that. And the guy comes home, and he's like, "What is going on here?" After a couple of days of this stuff, he's like, "Get off my lawn,"
Yeah.
So I feel bad for the guy, but I just glad it was in the middle of the subdivision. We have like a 1900 house subdivision, so it's a big area. But yeah, I couldn't imagine living next door to that the whole time. You got to beep your horn and try and make you. And it was in a cul-de-sac in the subdivision, so it was even worse to get to.
Yeah,
the police is out there and everything.
So yeah, I mean, and so to answer your question, I mean, I'm from originally from like Northwest Indiana, but Chicago suburbs. Like I went to high school in Illinois and everything like that, so familiar with that area.
What high school?
Marian Catholic. It's in Chicago Heights.
Oh yeah. I went to Brother Rice High School.
Okay, all right.
You guys Brother Rice High School.
Yeah, you guys were a lot better in athletics than we were.
My son played Marian Catholic at the first round of playoffs when in 2019 they lost to Loyola in the championship, and they went to Marian Catholic, and you guys had like a fireworks show and all this stuff. What is going on here? There's 150, 190 kids at Brother Rice graduating every year, and Marian Catholic seemed like a humongous place compared to that. And I think Rice won like 38-0. It was kind of a beatdown, but Marian Catholic was ready for us. They were ready to go. Fireworks, the whole deal. It was crazy. It was a nice stadium though, man. You guys, it was nice stuff.
At least we had that going for us. Yeah, they built that probably my sophomore year when I was there. So that was 2019 was a little bit after my time, but yeah. So small.
I'm starting up a dynasty league with a bunch of home. I have like a bunch of dynasty leagues. I'm starting up a new home league. That's why I'm like, man, when you said that, I was like, if you live around here, man, I got an extra spot in this. I start a new one up every year, and I got one now, but you're gone.
So I don't want to get off topic, but I actually, so I'm in the midst of moving. I'm actually moving back to that area in November. So yeah. I got a new job up in Crown Point, Indiana, if you know where that is.
Yeah, I do. My cousins have lived in Chesterton, so it's like 45 minutes from my house. It's really not bad at all. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've only got 8 spots filled right now. I don't know how many leagues you're in, but it's a home league, and whoever wins gets to pick the location of the draft every year. So, even if you're right over the border.
Well, send me a DM. I might be able to convince my wife that I'll sneak out and enjoy. I mean, there's worse things husbands could be doing than
That's for
than
sure.
playing fantasy football, right?
You're saying the magic
like,
words. You're saying the
that's
magic
one of
words.
my.
That's go ahead, Jake.
Like I was gonna say one of my favorite scenes ever is This Is 40 when he has to like lie about what he's doing and he like sneaks away for the fantasy baseball draft. And you know, you always see those memes where the guy's laying in bed with his wife and the wife's like, I bet she's thinking about other women. They're like, I wonder if I could trade Najee Harris for Travis Etienne. You know, it's like that. That's like they think we're thinking about something crazy. Like we're just, my girlfriend's always like, who are you talking to? I'm like, a bunch of fantasy football geeks are always texting me on. We're always talking to each other online. She's like, who are you even talking to? But I'm like, yeah, that's who's up at night. And believe me, John, she was sitting right in front when you called me. If I got in the league, in her face, she just looked at me. She's like, I get off the phone. She's like, are you getting in another fantasy football league? I was like, I got this. My boy John, I got to get in it. She's like, oh. She's like, when's it going to end? I'm like, I don't know. Sometime soon I'll stop joining leagues, but we'll see what happens.
I got friends who spend thousands of dollars. I mean, almost hundreds of $1,000s on boats and fishing gear and hunting gear and stuff like that, And here I'm spending $150 on like, $20,
$50, $100 on a league is nothing.
And it's all you got to do is win a couple of them. You made your money back, let alone if you win a couple, you're golden, So there's no return on doing that, like boating and fishing, that kind of stuff. You're just throwing money in a hole in the water when you get a boat and stuff, So I don't know. Anyway,
I hear you.
So tell me about Adam. Tell me about yourself. Where the people on the Twitter machine can find you, what you do in the fantasy football community.
For sure. You can find me on Twitter at @thereal_Adam_H. I provide weekly fantasy football content over at 4for4.com. The training room article is what it called. It basically just breaks down all the injuries of that week with a fantasy football focus, obviously, to help managers prepare for the waiver wire. I also do stuff for their YouTube page. I have my own podcast / YouTube page that comes out every Sunday night, early Monday morning. It's called The Initial Evaluation. And I started dabbling a little bit on the old TikTok, just loading some short videos up on there. I think there's a real push for that. So people, if TikTok injuries, and it's a little bit more of a dynasty focus because I enjoy playing it in dynasty fantasy football leagues. You can find me there at initial_eval_ff on TikTok. Yeah. So. I think you're muted there.
There you go, Johnny.
I do it all the time. My neighbor is Nick Scripp, and he does that YouTube, that Nick TikTok stuff all the time, and YouTube, and I mean he's super busy on across the board on all fantasy football stuff, But he does TikTok every day with he's got the Halloween face, the lions and the wolves and everything else like that. Last couple of days on his TikTok, so he's him and I forgot the other guy from used to be on Mind the Mansion show all the time. He does TikToks all the time too. But yeah, it's becoming a big thing. I mean, it's so if you can.
I think with YouTube Shorts and like TikTok, I just think everybody's attention span, for good or for bad, is a little bit shorter, or they don't want to read stuff. Or some people now don't. I don't mind listening to a long form podcast when I'm driving or anything, but some people are just like, hey, I want to know, like, I want to watch like a 30-second, 60-second clip and like move on. And I think there's been a lot of growth in that area. So I was definitely hesitant about it, but I just think that getting on top of that, people are really starting to be interested more in that stuff.
I'm on a 4-on 4-off rotation with 12-hour shifts to midnights and days and stuff. So I got 4 days off in between. I'm doing housework. I was fixing my lawnmower today. Like I have nothing to do but throw earphones in, listen to podcasts. But my biggest problem is I don't take notes. I do it all by memory, and it's gonna, eventually I'm gonna get old and forget everything I listen to and not be able to do it. I got to start writing stuff down, or else I'm gonna forget everything. So, oh well, it is what it is. But when did you start playing fantasy football? Are you more of a redraft or dynasty guy? I think we already answered that a little bit, but are you still dabble a lot in redraft?
Yeah, I mean, I would say mostly now in dynasty leagues, but I am in a couple of redraft leagues, just with like similar to what you're doing with home leagues and some family leagues where those are fun. I started out in redraft. I want to say I started playing fantasy football probably 10 years ago, and I've probably been paying dynasty the last like 3 years. So I've got a couple dynasty teams that are absolute dumpster fires because I got into it when I didn't really understand it, and I'm basically rebuilding them. But it's a lot of fun. I think if you enjoy fantasy football, just the game theory behind, acquiring picks, or like if you want to get younger and trading and kind of looking beyond this season, makes it a lot of fun. So like most of us, I'm sure that's why I gravitated more to dynasty as well.
Yeah, I was always not the dynasty guy, and then all of a sudden, bam, I'm in all these dynasty leagues now, and I do all these home leagues. It's going to be 8 home leagues pretty soon, and just all guys from around here, and we have rookie drafts in person, we have team meetings in person. Every people come to my house, I go to some people's house. Guys I met on Twitter that they're creators. Justin's going to be in one of my leagues this year. It's just got people I find on Twitter that do content, that create stuff, that do their own videos, and it's super awesome to be in leagues with knowledgeable people, especially when you can meet up in person, drink beers every couple of weeks. So,
yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's super frustrating too when you're in the leagues with a lot of smart people, because I sometimes think we have a lot of groupthink, where if everyone's got their pulse on kind of the same thing, it's really hard to get the edge on anybody. But yeah, I mean, that's what makes it fun.
The more you play, the more leagues you start up, the more you learn, and it's kind of like, I wish I would have started off my league that way. I get it. I've been there before myself, and I'm learning patience as I go on now. And I'm learning, like, that I used to like use the trade calculators and stuff, and like, oh, look, if I trade these, this guy's trading me these 3 players, it works out the same as Josh Allen. Okay, cool. I'll take that trade, and you realize, oh man, I got, 10 dimes for $1 bill on this trade. I got totally rammed up my arse, and it's, you live and you learn, you grow up, and now, like, those trade calculators are nice to kind of look at once in a while, but they're really not a serious, you really shouldn't use them too much unless you know what you're doing, kind of thing.
For sure.
So, what's your favorite Sunday afternoon munching food when you're glued to the TV watching Scott Hansen on Red Zone?
Honestly, I am probably one of the least picky eaters out there, especially when I moved down here into Florida, dabbling a lot of different seafood options and things like that. I can pretty much eat anything. It's kind of just whatever the flavor of the day is. Pizza, nachos, oysters, Rockefeller. It just kind of depends on what we're feeling that day. Tacos. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'm pretty diverse when it comes to food.
Man, that must be nice, sitting in a tiki bar watching the Red Zone with the sun on your back, drinking margaritas all day long with oysters, Rockefeller. Sounds like a tough life.
It's not a bad weekend, especially when the wife enjoys football. She'll start yelling at the TV, and I'm like, okay, man, I'll order another second beer.
Outstanding. Very good. What's your favorite hobby before you started playing fantasy football? What did you do for a hobby? What was your favorite thing to do as growing up as a kid before you got into fantasy football?
Yeah, I mean, like most kids, played a lot of sports in high school and everything like that. Played a lot of soccer growing up and all through high school and college and whatnot. As I gotten a little bit older, dabbling a little, especially if you live in Florida, you got to play golf. Everybody golfs. So I'm not any good at it, but that's another Sunday activity or Saturday activity where you can grab a 6-pack and get and hang out with a couple friends and play 9 holes, play 18 holes. So I would say outside of that and outside of just hanging out with my family, and that's pretty much it. That's all I got time for besides work.
Yeah, right. Where do you see yourself in 5 years in the fantasy football community?
Oh, man, it's actually a really good question. I think kind of doing what I do now. I think a lot of times with fantasy football content, I mean, everybody's a little bit different in terms of what they want to get out of it. You got to love what you do. You got to enjoy it. So I'm always trying to work on new projects, refine my craft a little bit in terms of data analysis and stuff like that. I'm kind of one of those nerds that like spreadsheets and Excel spreadsheets and working with R and things like that. So just finding different things that help the fantasy football community, give people edge, give myself a little bit of edge, creating content, kind of like what I'm doing now. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm self-learning how to use Google Sheets, and it's been a battle. I learned so much But I just see these guys flying through now. Like my kids are like, oh yeah, you just press R and do this and compare that sheet and this sheet and this and that and the other. And they write it down for me. I do it with them. And the next day I'm like, what did I do yesterday? How did I do this again? Like I can't grasp the concept of Google Sheets. I don't know what it is. We did the Oregon Trail when I was in school. It's not like,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
If you really want, I mean, yeah, and that's the great thing about the younger generation is it feels like with all that data analysis stuff, they pick that up real quick and they know coding and all like that. If you're interested in some resources, I can give you some things that have helped me along the way. But that's just kind of me. I just like nerding out over that stuff sometimes and looking at it and having something to kind of validate your point, and give it some substance. I think is nice as well.
I think that's a big thing that most analysts learn is when you first come in, it's a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of like, man, I saw this happen in front of my eyes. I know what's going on. And then you sit back and you look at the stats and all of a sudden, oh shit, he's the third most ball carry. He's the third most carries on the team this week, and when you go back, you got to kind of watch it first and then look at the stats and see what happened, compare the numbers and then make your assumptions on, or make your evaluations on what happened in real life and in front of your eyes too. So it's not as easy as just starting to write stuff and with your opinion and just letting it fly, because you find yourself wrong a lot of times if you don't use the evaluation. So
for sure.
If you got to spend 2 minutes with an 18-year-old self on your high school graduation day, what would you say to yourself?
Probably. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. With some of that coding and data analysis stuff when I was in college, that stuff didn't really interest me, but I would probably say like, hey, that stuff's going to be important because honestly too, with my professional job, as a physical therapist in a managerial role, looking at different things on the monthly basis when you're having those manager meetings, getting in Excel spreadsheets and some of the data analysis, that stuff comes in handy a lot in my professional life and in my hobby here in fantasy football. So as opposed to teaching myself when I'm 30, I'd probably be like, hey, learn about some of that stuff when you're a little bit younger in college. It's going to be helpful. You're going to use it a lot.
Yeah, I would have, I played football and water polo and baseball. I would have definitely, and track and field and stuff like that. I would have definitely took golf, even though everybody laughed at it. Back in the day, it was kind of like all the nerds play golf. And then you get out of school, you're like, oh, gee, I can't play football anymore. I can't play 16-inch softball anymore. I can't play this anymore. I can't do that anymore. I could play golf, but I suck at it so bad now. And that's all I do is throw my clubs all over the course, and I miss the ball 30 times a game, So, yeah, that's something I wish I could have pressed the rewind button on and, that kind of deal. So, but all right, we're talking about injuries this week. It's kind of the main topic since we have a professional on the show with us. So let's talk about some injuries. I subscribe to 4for4, so I on the
awesome.
show sheet I put some. Yeah, it's an awesome site. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite sites to go to. So you got up here some of the guys that got hurt this week or recently. So if you want to just kind of comb through your article and just kind of give everybody some information on the update the recent injuries that happened this week, and so what's going on, who we're waiting for, who we should be waiting for, and who to pick up instead of the players that are there.
Sure, for sure. I mean, I think the big one that we all learned about and that everyone wants to know about is Jamar Chase. 1 second here. Sorry about that. When my camera gets too hot, sometimes it shuts off. The big one that everyone wants to know about is Jamar Chase with the hip injury. So I dove into that a lot. I mean, the initial timeline that we were given, or that the Athletic was reporting, was like 4 to 6 weeks as he's dealing with a hip fracture and a hip flexor strain. I think the two main components of this is with that hip fracture. I think the hip fracture is going to be the most limiting thing in terms of his return to play timeline. But the Bengals haven't put him on IR, and they actually have a bye week coming up here. And I think the reason they did that is they think that they can get Jamar Chase back in 4 weeks. So they're going to use that bye leverage. They're thinking that he's going to miss at least 3 games. And I think that aligns a lot with the research. Looking at return to play timelines for people that have had a fracture in that similar area or just any fracture allowing it to heal, it's around 6 weeks. But Jamar Chase has been playing through this injury. He originally injured it, we think, against the Saints. That's when he first popped up on that injury report. And the crazy thing about it is, playing with that hip fracture, he goes out the next week, drops 33 PPR PPR points and finishes as the number one wide receiver that week. So that gives you an idea of just the immense upside that Jamar Chase has. And a lot of what was being thrown around on Twitter is, built different. Well, yeah, I think Jamar Chase proved he is built different. He's definitely different. So I think a 4-week timeline from now, week 12, then that would put him around when he can turn. I think that's a realistic timeline. Now, in terms of fantasy football production, we talked a lot about earlier, like data analysis and looking at things. A lot of what I look at for injuries, because I think what fantasy gamers want to know, the main thing is a lot of the medical stuff is cool and nice, but they want to know how long is my player going to be out and what's he going to look like when he comes back. A big article that I wrote earlier this season at 4for4, it's called the Injury Index. It goes through position by position and just breaks down the most common injuries. How long do they miss? What's the re-injury rate? What's the fantasy for production their first week back? What's their fantasy production on average the next 3 games back, to give you an idea of what injuries are lingering? I don't have a lot of data on hip flexor strains. I think soft tissue injuries, when I look at some of this data set, is some of the most limiting stuff. But with a hip flexor strain, what I do have a lot of is injury on groin strains, which are very closely related to hip flexor strains. And on average, those players see around a 15 to 17% dip the 3 games after their injury. So that tells us that they're still dealing with some of the side effects of that soft tissue injury when they come back. But with Jamar Chase, I mean, a 15% decrease in fantasy football production on a points per game basis probably brings him down from like the wide receiver 6 that he's at now to wide receiver 9 and 10. Like, if Jamar Chase is back, you're going to play him. So I think the big takeaway here is 4 weeks is probably what we can expect with Jamar Chase, which I think is a big sigh of relief for players that drafted him.
Yeah, I don't think, well, especially in Dynasty, it doesn't matter. Like something like that, you're not getting him from somebody. And in redraft, it's kind of, somebody could see that in that window of, man, he'll be back right before the playoffs. I'm not getting rid of this guy. He'll come back, even if he's wide receiver 9 or 10 or 14. It's still it's a must start in your lineup. So that kind of deal is.
Yeah, if you can figure it out, if you can piece it together these next couple of weeks, and make sure that your team gets in the fantasy football playoffs, I think you're going to be in a decent spot.
The next guy you have listed is Rashad Bateman from the Ravens. They got a foot injury. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at some of the data for NFL wide receivers, foot injuries are probably some of the toughest ones for wide receivers to come back from. There's a lot of examples, but I think the most prominent example that we can remember, people think about, is Michael Thomas. That's just been like dealing with these nagging foot injuries, and it's led to the decline of his career. To a similar issue, kind of Julio Jones earlier part of his career really got it off to a rocky start because he was dealing with some of these foot issues. So I don't like to see a wide receiver dealing with those type of issues. So the fact that he came back probably re-aggravated and now is going to be out a little bit longer, I don't love. And additionally, we're looking at re-injury rates. Foot injuries amongst wide receivers carry the 3rd highest re-injury rate of injuries of the 15 most common injuries that I've looked at for wide receivers. So I wrote in my article, like, I certainly am not advising you to do this, but in shallower leagues, like if you had to drop Rashad Bateman at this point, I understand. I think he's probably going to be operating at around 75% when he comes back. You certainly can't trust him those first 2 weeks when he does come back anyways. I think he's probably going to miss another 2 to 3 weeks with this foot injury again. So I get it. If you're in a pinch and you're just like, listen, I need production and I'm not going to be able to use this guy for the 2 weeks that he's out and maybe 2 to 3 weeks after that because I don't trust him. I understand. I don't know what's on your waiver wire. It depends on your league format, but I'm not loving this for Rashad Bateman. 2 seasons back to back where he's really dealt with injuries.
Another one, probably the most important one for a lot of people on this list, they're playing tight end premium leagues. You got Mark Andrews here for the Baltimore Ravens. They're saying that he should be back, but the problem is he has got a game and then a bye week. So it's the game. His game's not till Monday Night Football. So you're waiting. If you're going to let him sit all the way to the very end of Monday night, you're going to get a 0 unless you have Isaiah Likely. But it's your SOL if you don't have that stack of those tight ends, which and most people are not lucky enough to have Isaiah Likely behind Mark Andrews. But is he going to be able to play next Monday night?
I think the good thing is Monday night. when I watched his injury, McGlynn's injury aligned really closely with an AC joint sprain. The good thing about those is they aren't super debilitating in terms of when a player is able to come back. The bad part is early on in the acute stages of that injury, it's super painful. So those players usually have what's called a painful arc, which is when they raise their arm kind of up in this motion overhead. It's super painful on that shoulder joint. If they can manage that a little bit, because I mean, obviously a tight end or a receiver has got to be able to get their hands over their head, pushing for blocking, especially if you're a tight end. Those things are kind of problematic the first couple of weeks. I've currently got him projected to miss this Monday just because I think it makes the most sense for Baltimore with the bye week coming up, and the fact that you don't want Mark Andrews to re-aggravate this or re-injure this, and they've gotten decent production out of Isaiah Likely. For the most part, with these injuries that I've been tracking for those Monday night games, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport have been pretty good about leaking Sunday night kind of the availability for not only the Sunday slate of games, but Monday games as well. So I think you'll have an idea. Depending on what league you're in, I play in a lot of Yahoo leagues. Isaiah Likely's still out there, so if you could scoop him up as an insurance policy, I would definitely make that a priority. If you're playing in those type of leagues and have Mark Andrews, because I think right now, truly, it's probably a 50-50 shot, and it would not surprise me if he missed on Monday.
I know a guy who's got Isaiah Likely, and he played me last week, and he had no other tight end, so he's like, I'll just stick in Isaiah Likely, and he beat me by 1.2 points in our dynasty league. And it's like in my division, now he's ahead of me by like a half game. I'm like, this is what a joke. This only happens to me,
Yeah, I've been there.
John, I remember I talked last week. The two zappy interceptions in the fourth quarter, I was winning, and then I ended up losing by 3 points because he threw the 2 picks. Oh, it happens. It's brutal.
It seems like I feel like that guy in the Peanuts cartoons, and there's always like a cloud hanging over him that's raining on him all the time. That's me in fantasy football. Gus Edwards injury, hamstring. It's kind of a new one. Kenyon Drake's kind of the guy to go to. Tell me about that, because hamstrings are funny.
Yeah. And John Harbaugh is reporting that it's a minor hamstring strain, which I think is good. But in the past with John Harbaugh, he's been one of those coaches that, in my experience, hasn't been super transparent with some of these injuries. I'm a little bit worried just because of where Gus Edwards, he had an ACL, but he also had an LCL tear, and the proximity of the LCL and hamstring, it's not uncommon to have that hamstring type of soft tissue injury following the type of surgery that he has. I don't think the Ravens want this to become a bigger issue than it is. This is a guy that was just getting kind of back into the fold. You don't want to rush him out there and then lose him for a longer extended period of time, especially with J.K. Dobbins on the shelf for the next couple of weeks. Even though it is a Monday night game, again, I think this is another guy that the Ravens say, hey, let's turn to Kenyon Drake for one more week, give Gus Edwards 2 weeks to get back out there and see where he's at.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake's more than sufficient back for that offense. He's played pretty well, so it's somebody I'd feel comfortable starting if he was on my bench for in a flex spot anyway. Probably even better than that, but that's a good problem to have. And I love Gus Edwards. I've had him since day one. He came out, day one. Since he's been available in the NFL, and it just right when he started shining, he got hurt, and it's like the dream is just kind of like is it over now? I mean, I don't know. You never trust these guys until they come back, and he's getting a little older year by year. His injuries keep popping up. It's just terrible, these situations, but it's part of the game. It happens to everybody. So, another big one, Jonathan Taylor from the Colts, ankle injury. They just traded for Zach Moss today. So, but tell me about Jonathan Taylor. Everybody wants to know about this because another foot injury, bad news. Tell me about it.
Yeah. And it's the same ankle that caused him to miss 2 weeks earlier in the season. He played through this injury. He was far less efficient when he did come back. So he was averaging over 7 yards per carry before he sprained his ankle. He had that big run actually where he re-aggravated it, pulled off to the sideline, and was getting it retaped, and did come back in, but was far less efficient, only averaging around 3.5 yards per carry. Some of that's game script. Some of that's the Colts offensive line has not been very good this year. But I think some of that could be related to the ankle. Because he came back, because Jonathan Taylor, for the most part, seems like a guy that's going to play through some of these injuries and try to bounce back. I think he could play next week. I've currently projected him to play in week 9. It makes me a little bit nervous with the Colts. I think they weren't like big sellers at the trade deadline. I mean, they traded Nyheim Hines, I think, which was certainly expendable for them, but they've pivoted off of Matt Ryan. They're going to Sam Ehlinger. might be tanking here a little bit. If this becomes a bigger issue with Jonathan Taylor's ankle, I just get worried. This is purely speculation on my part, but I get worried towards the end of the season. The Colts just go like, hey, let's just shut this guy down if this ankle continues to be an issue the rest of the season. Problem obviously for fantasy football playoffs when you're going to need them.
Yeah, I'm a Zach Moss guy. I don't know why he didn't pan out in Buffalo, but he was PFF's #1 rated running back coming out of the draft, his draft year, and I love the guy. I try to get him everywhere, and then I laid off for a couple weeks when he was a buy low candidate. Now it's like, if he's on this team and he becomes the PPR back on this offense, I'm gonna be so pissed. It's somebody I always want, and I never get, and I kick myself in the ass when I miss the opportunity to get him. But I love the guy. We'll see what happens. Deion Jackson's there too.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well. Is I think if you haven't already in redraft, we're heading into week 9. We're getting to those fantasy football playoffs. You should start handcuffing some of your more marquee players. If you're a Jonathan Taylor manager and you don't have Deion Jackson at this point, I think you definitely need to be adding him just in case they pull the rug out from underneath you during your fantasy football playoffs. He's somebody I would be stashing.
Can I ask you a question about injuries here? Like when somebody like Jonathan Taylor gets hurt and then goes to the sideline and gets taped and he's able to finish the game, but then it hampers him so much for the next month that he's not himself. How do you? I mean, is it a pain tolerance thing, or is it like did they give these guys? Did they rub something on their foot to make it like a numb for the rest of the game, and they can't feel it? Or I mean, like what happens? How are they able to go back in there and perform, but then be hurt for the next month and a half, maybe longer?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, adrenaline's a big piece of it. I mean, you talked about playing sports in high school. How many times did you get hurt with something and you didn't really even feel it? You played through the entire game, and then afterwards you're just like, "Whew, what the heck? I feel like I got hit by a bus." I think that's a big part of it. Obviously, it's been well documented. The NFL teams giving these players something in terms of pain management. But I think it just ultimately comes down to this is a business for both the players and the teams, and I think where people get caught up, I don't work for a professional team. I know some people that do. When they're in a totally different mindset in season than we are as, I guess, regular physical therapists or during the off season. In season, you're just putting out fires. You're trying to just get that guy's pain as low as it possibly can, get his production the most that you can get out of him, because the seasons are short. It's a little bit longer now, but the NFL season's 17 weeks or so. It's a short week. Like they're just trying to get these guys back. So if Jonathan Taylor at 60 to 70% is what they're going to get, the Colts know that that's their best option, as well as Deion Jackson is playing, or as promising as maybe Zach Moss looks. They're just trying to get him back out there, and he wants to be out there. That's how he gets his incentives, and that's how he gets paid. That's how he earns a living. So it's tough. I think in season, it's not about fixing some of those issues. It's like I said, just kind of putting out fires so they can play the next week.
Yeah. Cooper Kupp, ankle sprain. How bad is this for Cooper Kupp?
I think he dodged a major injury, which is why I buried him a little bit lower in this article. It happened towards the end of the game. He got rolled up on. That mechanism of injury, when you get rolled up on like that, is very common for a high ankle sprain. But Cooper Kupp's foot didn't really get trapped. It kind of gets picked up, and he sprained it. It looked like on video a little bit, but I think he avoided a major injury. I think he's somebody that should play next week.
Yeah, I saw 1,000 different angles because he's such a prolific receiver. Everybody's going to show their version of this angle, that angle, and how bad it looked or how good it looked or how he avoided it or whatever. But I hope that he did avoid a serious injury, because he is I don't have him on any team, unfortunately, but I hate seeing guys get hurt that are at the top of their game.
For sure.
Adam Thielen, knee contusion. What is a contusion? Does that just mean it's a cut or like a bruise, or like how bad is?
Yeah. I wrote about, like, anytime I see knee contusion, I get a little bit concerned, because I think that term is used relatively loosely. Like earlier in the season with the injury that Zach Wilson had, where it was like a bone bruise. I've seen that sometimes being reported as a knee contusion, even though it's a more serious injury. Found the video going back on watching all 22 of the Minnesota Vikings. He just landed on his kneecap. I think it's probably a true knee contusion, just a bruise. It doesn't feel very good, but he should be able to play next week as well.
Nothing like his bursa sack or nothing like that. Nothing like crazy, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, but I think for lack of a better term, it's just probably a bruised knee. You just hit it just right.
Mark Ingram, MCL sprain. You got like 3
Yeah.
weeks timetable here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a pretty common timetable for NFL running backs dealing with an MCL sprain is about 3 to 4 weeks. Be telling if he's looking at the latter part of that if the Saints put him on IR because if they think he's going to miss 4 weeks or 5 weeks, they might as well put him on IR. If they don't, then I'm probably leaning closer to that 3-week spot. Dwayne Washington is the third guy on the depth chart there. I mean, with the Saints, it wouldn't be surprising if they added somebody at some point if they're concerned that Mark Ingram's going to miss more time. Obviously, it's Alvin Kamara's backfield, but they tend to like to limit his carries a little bit just to keep him fresh.
They're keeping Andy Dalton on the field just because he's making Kamara's stock fantasy value actually relevant. As Jameis doesn't throw down and to check down the receiver, so it's in their best interest to keep Dalton out there. It is what it is. So,
absolutely.
Any other injuries that we should know about? Anything else? I saw. Okay, one more thing. Irv Smith here. They put him on IR for 4 weeks, but then they brought in TJ Hawkinson. So is it the death of Irv Smith in fantasy now, or what's the story with that?
And I need to go back and update that because I saw another timeline that they were projecting about eight weeks or more, which is telling us that it's a pretty significant high ankle sprain, probably in a high ankle sprain that Irv Smith's going to need surgery on. I think he's droppable in all formats with them acquiring TJ Hawkinson. I don't think you're going to see Irv Smith the rest of the season. And if you do, he's not going to be usable with Hawkinson on the field.
I don't know what his contract status is, but yeah, if he's got a 2 or 3 year cheap, they might keep him there as a backup, but for the most part, yeah, he needs to either go somewhere else or that's it because Hawkinson obviously is a premier. He's number 4 tight end in the league this year, so it is what it is, Yeah,
for sure.
We're gonna do some current events and player news and stuff. You got time to stick around, or I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of stuff going on. It's been about 40 minutes already, so I think
I can stick around. I can stick around for a couple and then dip out here at some point.
Well, I want to talk trades and stuff. Like the Bears traded their own 2023 second round pick to the Steelers for wide receiver Chase Claypool, and then they waived Isaiah Coulter after. But what do you think about Claypool coming to the Bears? I mean, he just seems like he's got a little, he's got some kind of issues going on with how do you call it, maturity, things like that. What do you think about that move, Adam? We'll start with you first.
In terms of a fantasy football aspect, I mean, I think it has to be an upgrade for Chase Claypool and Justin Fields. I mean, Chase Claypool is going to a team with significantly less target share. Justin Fields, gets another weapon for him. So I think in terms of fantasy football, it's all good. In terms of real life football, if you're a Bears fan, I'd be a little bit disappointed just because the pick that they gave up, I think is going to turn out being a top 40 pick for a wide receiver that I don't think garnishes top 40 value, especially with the Bears. I don't think the Bears are like a wide receiver away from being a playoff team. I think they've got some other glaring issues in terms of the things on the offensive line and whatnot. I would like to see them invest that pick in a younger player. And even with this wide receiver class that's coming out in 2023, you probably could have gotten somebody there as well. So I didn't love it from a real life aspect, but in terms of fantasy football, I think for Fields and Claypool, it's stock up.
Yeah, I just don't understand like the whole. You could have got like you said, a decent pick and locked him up for a cheap contract for 4 years, been on a team, see what you got. Now you got Claypool at the end of his rookie deal, kind of like coming in here, and it's like, what do I got? Then you get to re-sign the guy if he does pan out. And if the Steelers can't make him relevant, how are the Bears going to do it? On an up and coming team. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I got a lot of texts about this trade today. It was number one on my text list. All my Bears fans were texting me, and all the Steelers fans were texting me as well, saying what I thought about it. I think it's twofold for the Bears. I think they could have got a really good wide receiver with that pick, but I also think for them, everybody's been complaining about how they're not getting Fields any help, and he's finally started to look pretty good the last couple of weeks. So I think that they kind of were feeling a little bit of desperation to get some guy. Also, there was a ton of talk about the Packers going after Claypool. I think they wanted to trade a later second or early third for him, and I think the Packers hanging around forced them up to take that early second pick. I think they probably were offering that Ravens pick that they ended up getting in the Roquan Smith trade, but then I think it was later than the Packers pick that they were offering. So I think they had to move up and make that top 40 possible pick. as a Steelers fan, I like the move a ton. There was no way they were going to re-sign Claypool. There was absolutely no way after next year they were going to give him a big deal. It was not in the cards. Everything they've said, drafting players showed that they were kind of over him, and he's had a lot of issues as far as the fan base has gone with the Steelers. I think people were ready to move on, and I think people were pumped when they realized how high a draft pick this can be, because this is where they kill picking wide receivers. So I think they think, hey, we get rid of this guy, we then go O-line. They still need a middle linebacker, which just made me sick with that Roquan Smith trade. I'm like, oh, you guys could have traded a second and a fifth guy, Roquan Smith, but because that's really what they need is a middle linebacker. But I think it's great for the Steelers. And also, I mean, I think Chase Claypool's got a ton of talent. The issue's been for him is maturity and how does he use his physical ability. He's a guy who's been getting roughed up by small cornerbacks his whole career. Everybody says, hey, just out jump him, you're huge. And he just doesn't. I don't know why. He tries to catch at a really low point instead of a high point. If that's something that the Bears can fix, he's exactly what you say they need. Big bodied guy, has speed, the opposite of Mooney. So, I mean, he knows Cole Kmet from them playing at Notre Dame together. Maybe that's going to be that little connection, that buddy connection of somebody he knows that will help him get it acclimated to the system. He's everything that the Bears have been asking for as fans. You just got to hope he's the max Chase Claypool he can be and not the slightly disappointed the last year and a half he's been for the Steelers.
Go pick up Calvin Austin. That's my. He's on my.
Oh,
He's
if
on
he
my
was going to
IR
play this
everywhere.
year.
I
Yeah,
know
I've got him on. I've stashed him on a ton of dynasty leagues. The big question is whether he's actually even going to play this season because of the injury. I don't think he's going to. But yeah, I think he's a guy that is going to go in with a lot of high upside next year, depending on what they do in the draft. As he's a guy who could end up being their number 3 receiver.
Yeah, he ain't going nowhere from my teams, especially on IR. I got an extra spot. He's like a cheat code for me as far as that goes. But Bengals did nothing today. The Bills traded my guy. Went out for my homie. I can't get anywhere. Zach Moss.
See, we're on the other side of that. I am a total Singletary guy. I don't like Moss at all. I have him on one team, and the only reason I took him, I was super late in the draft, and I already had Singletary, and I just took him to back up Singletary. I love Neon Hines. Fantasy-wise, yeah, he's going to get you a flex play occasionally. Real-life football-wise, I just think he does a lot of things. He did a lot of things for the Colts. I think he fits really well with the Bills. The problem isn't he basically Singletary? Isn't he just a little bit older James Cook? So that's the only thing I didn't understand about from the Bills side on that trade was it feels like they traded for a guy they've already got 2 of. So that for me was a little bit strange on why the Bills made that move. I think he's better than Moss. Hopefully, as a Colts fan, I'm hoping Moss ends up turning around when he gets on the Colts. But I've just never been a Moss guy. But we'll see. He might get an opportunity if JT struggles with these injuries the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with James Cook for them to make that move. But it is what it is. If Nyheim Hines comes in there and wins, I mean, they're obviously in win now right now. So whatever, if it's 10% better than what they have right now, and they can make a move for it, a 6th-round pick, an expiring contract for Nyheim Hines, who's proven talent. I'm okay with Zach Moss going to the Colts too. That's fine. They got rid of the pass catcher and put what I think is. I mean, Zach Moss, I think is a really good talent. A little bit slower than the Hines, but it is what it is.
The biggest thing for Hines for me, I think, is if you're the Bills, if you're worried about your slot receivers, guys being healthy, he proved with the Colts he can play a lot of slot. He can kick return, he can punt return, and he played a ton of wide receiver, lined up outside all the time. So he can move around a lot, which is why I liked him on the Colts. I just felt like he was a guy you could move all over the field for real life football that could help you. And if you're on a kick return PPR league or a punt return league, you're getting yardage. He always helps you there because he just bumps up a few extra yards with all those returns.
Adam, how do you feel about this trade? Because I like Zach Moss a lot, and like Nick Scripps said this morning in a Twitter thing that Zach Moss led the Bills in receiving. He had 6 receptions week 1, and he kind of got shut down a little bit. Maybe they knew they were going to make something happen. They just didn't have a chance to do it, and now it was their time to sell him, and he could be maybe possibly a better blocking, and maybe about the same Nyheim Hines, a little bit faster than Nyheim Hines. What do you think?
I think it's kind of an interesting trade. I don't know if you'll see a lot of what maybe the Bills are thinking this week, just because it's going to be tough for him to kind of acclimate. But week 10, 11, I think could be interesting. If you remember, I mean, the Bills signed JD McKissick and then had Washington snipe him away this offseason. And then they go into the draft and they draft James Cook. And then they made this trade for Naeem Hines. I think they were kind of looking for that pass catching running back. Josh Allen, more inclined to tuck it and run than kind of dump it off. But if they're designing some plays because they have a specific role that they're looking for a running back to fill, I think it could be honestly interesting in the Bills offense. Might hurt Isaiah McKenzie a little bit, might hurt Devin Singletary a little bit in PPR if they're not using him that way. I think it's kind of a sneaky play. I'm a little bit pessimistic. Maybe in some deeper leagues, if he's on the waiver wire, I'd be adding him. But I think the Bills, for whatever reason, wanted a running back in this role, and they've been trying to get one for a while.
Yeah, it's absolutely. The Broncos get Chase Edmonds, 23 first. San Francisco, the Dolphins get Bradley Chubb. What do you think about that trade? Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead. What do you think about that trade?
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent about it. I think it just hurts everybody. Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray. I think it's just going to kind of be a three-headed monster there unless one of them gets hurt. I didn't love it for anyone. He wasn't really getting used in Miami, but I mean, if you there were some people that were pretty high on Chase Edmonds. He was going in the 7th, 8th round of redraft leagues. I think he's kind of droppable at this point.
Yeah, I think both of those teams just kind of use running back by committees on a regular basis, so it doesn't really. Nobody's going to come out and be the guy. It's not going anywhere. But it's the Dolphins made out like this. I'm not in any IDP leagues, but they get Bradley Chubb.
I think
JT, what do you think about that?
I think Chubb he's a little there, and I think the Broncos just realized. I mean, we got to get some picks back from this Russell Wilson deal if we can somewhere. I think it's a good move because Miami looks at the playoffs. They're looking at playoffs now. They're like, hey, we got a good shot at making the playoffs. What are we going to have to do in the playoffs? We're going to have to put a lot more pressure on the QB. And that's why I think they make that. I mean, it's obviously a more real life move than fantasy move. But I know we don't talk a lot of IDP on the show, but if you are, Nick Bonito would be my guy. I'd be looking to scrape up for the Broncos. Rookie outside linebacker that was kind of playing behind Chubb. He's going to get a chance to get a lot more opportunity. He would be a guy that's pretty cheap out there right now. He's on most waiver wires unless you have a really deep league. He may be sit on a taxi squad or something, but he's a guy I can see getting some good IDP play after all this.
One more time you talk about IDP and you're not going to the show anymore.
I know you hate it.
All right. I didn't know Jerry Jeudy was on the trade market. I had no idea about that. I mean, I had no idea that he was even available to teams. So that was kind of a surprise to me when I saw his name being floated around this morning. I mean, he had a last couple good, real good game last week. I'm like, man, what the hell are they thinking? Why would they get rid of Jerry Jeudy? That's a situation Cortland Sutton's not been panning out. Jerry Judy's been the guy. Why are they in a big hurry to get rid of him? But again, maybe it's a business. It's a financial situation. So it is what it is. Kareem Hunt stayed put and for the Browns. I was surprised that he didn't get shipped, but I'm sure the Browns are happy with that. The way they performed the other night, it's a really nice situation to have two running backs like that on the same team. Excuse me.
Those are the two guys I thought was like the surprise non-trades was the Kareem Hunt and Brandon Cooks. I thought if anybody was going to get moved, it was going to be those two guys. Just for what you could get a decent return for them. And obviously Texans aren't really going anything this year. Hunt, I don't know. The Browns just don't seem like they're in love with Hunt. So I felt like they maybe would move him, but I was a little surprised, especially when I went and saw like Naeem Hines go for Moss and like a 5th and 6th swap. I'm like, nobody would give up a 4th for Hunt, really? I'm like, that just seemed like when they said that's what they were asking for, it seemed like that wasn't that much to get Hunt, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, it's craziness. I had no idea that. I saw that Cooks was pissed that he didn't get traded today. I don't know if you saw it. He tweeted himself like, "They're going to ruin my career." This is BS.
I assumed he thought he was going to go to a contender. There's a few teams that need wide receivers. He was one. I was surprised. I mean, the Texans are obviously quite a ways away. You would have thought they would try to get as many guys in return as they could for him. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see how that happens. But I mean, Calvin Ridley not even playing this year, and he gets traded, so you never know what happens.
I didn't know you can get traded while you were suspended. I thought you were like kind of like in a limbo where you couldn't do nothing. You were SOL, but I guess I'm wrong about that. Adam, did you know that? Did you know that you can get traded when you were suspended?
I did
For a
not
game?
know. I did not know that. I think it was a good trade for the Jags, though. I mean,
Oh
obviously
yeah.
what they're trying to do. So,
Oh, a whole
uh,
year of Trevor Lawrence learning the system, and then you're going to get a good receiver, a decent tight end, that's finally learning the system, a Calvin Ridley type player, and then your draft picks, and then free agency next year. I mean, that could be a rocket ship waiting to happen.
for
Yeah,
sure.
if he comes
For
back,
sure.
yeah, if he comes back and plays well, I mean, I think that offense is on the rise. I mean, they're still having some stumbling blocks, but they've looked really good certain weeks. And I think if you're the Jags, you go in and go, "Oh, this is nice for us. Maybe we don't have to look wide out as early in the draft as we thought we were going to have to look." If you put Kirk and him together again, Zay Jones is a solid third option for next year, but I think it opens up the draft big time for Jags next year.
The Chiefs said they had no plans to release Ronald Jones. That's fine. Cowboys said the Cowboys were trying to get Brandon Cooks, but it went all the way to the final minutes of the trade deadline before they couldn't get a deal done. So there was one team that verbally came out and said they did whatever they could to get him, and they couldn't get a deal done. So that was kind of it would have been nice to see him go somewhere that even better than the Cowboys, but he would have been somebody that would have he would have evaporated. He would have been the second best receiver on the team by far. So it is what it is. 49ers trade Jeff Wilson to the Dolphins. Now, is Jeff Wilson, what's he going to do on that team? Adam, what do you think about that trade?
I think that's a guy in Mike McDaniel that's just loading up on running backs that he's familiar with. I think it's smart. I mean, the injury history of Raheem Mostert is well documented. I think he's definitely going to be the primary, whether it's a 60-40 split. We'll see. But I think adding somebody that he's familiar with and that's familiar with his system to a running back that hasn't been the epitome of health the last couple of years was probably a smart move for them.
Yeah. So he'll probably be that, change of pace back for sure. Not exactly like not getting too much, but like we talked about the draft, Jaguars traded 2 picks for Calvin Ridley. The 6th becomes a 5th if he is reinstated by a certain date. The 24th conditional on making the 24th on conditional on making that in 2024 becomes a 3rd if he does play. It depends on how much he plays, and then if they re-sign him, it becomes a 2nd. So they put incentives in their tiers to see what happens, just in case he's not going to get reinstated this year. They're not. The NFL is not like the dad who feels bad about grounding their daughter and lets him out on Friday night kind of thing. He's not going anywhere. He's not playing this year, so that's going to be a next year thing. But to see that if they re-sign him, it costs him a 2nd-round pick. That's pretty smart writing by their lawyers to get all that stuff in writing for them before they sign them. So I'll give them kudos for that. I think we already talked about that, but the Packers offered a 2nd-round pick for Chase Claypool. We talked about that already. Cam Akers not a one that didn't get traded today. That was I thought they were going to do everything they possibly could. A 6th-round pick for some of these players. They probably could have took a 7th-round pick just to get rid of them because they'd hate him over there. So now it sounds like they're going to have to re-sign him or do something to keep him around. They don't want to cut him, but if he might be the 3rd wheel. JT, what do you think about that move today?
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't go anywhere, but I get it. I got that feeling it was like the Rams thought he was worth a ton, but they've already kind of given up their hand that says like, we really don't want him. And so I think, they were probably asking way more than what other teams are willing to give, especially when they basically already said they didn't want him. So, and then, it's one of those things. If you're another NFL team and a team is trying to get rid of a guy so bad that's so young, do you start second guessing yourself when you go into like, oh, we take that guy, and then you're like, well, if they don't like him, why do I like him? And do they know something I don't know? And that's where I couldn't tell if it was just they outsmarted themselves or tried to they outsmarted themselves, wanted like a 2nd-round pick or something crazy instead of like a 4th or a 5th for him. I don't know what the negotiations were, but it just seemed like he was a guy that definitely should have been moved again because they basically said they want to trade him, and it just became nobody wanted to give anything because they thought they should get him for free. So I don't know. That seems perplexing to me that a guy like that didn't get moved that they basically have said they don't want. But I think they chipped their hand too early, saying they were going to get rid of him.
Yeah, Adam, I left this on the Ravens side because the trade was kind of It's a financial thing. Roquan Smith to the Bears for a second to fifth round pick. That's it's fantasy football related, even though it's IDP, and I said IDP stuff right now, so I should shoot myself. But whatever. It's what do you think about that trade? Are the Bears really losing out because I don't know if a second and a fifth round pick is worth what a player of his caliber. I mean, he's a fan favorite for sure, but is he really worth the second and fifth round pick? Or I hear a lot of people saying that he's just average, or he makes a lot of tackles, but he can't cover anybody. What do you think? What about this trade?
I mean, I think he's a good linebacker. Whether he's a generational type linebacker, I would probably say no. I think it's a little bit of that sunken cost fallacy. Like, they weren't going to extend him. He wants a lot of money. And the Bears made it pretty clear that they were not going to pay him that. I think it was a mistake by the older regime. When you look at just valuables by position in terms on the defense, like the linebacker is probably one of the least important positions. So to sink a top 10 draft pick and a player like that, I think it was a mistake. And the Bears are trying to retool here a little bit. I think they're going to try to focus a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball to put some things around Justin Fields. So that's why they're just kind of loading up on draft capital at this point, with getting rid of Robert Quinn and then Roquan Smith. But that's what bugged me about it, is it's like you did all that and then you traded a more valuable pick for the Chase Claypool. So
yeah,
I thought, on Tuesday night, I thought, well, the Bears, at least they have a plan, and it looks like a good plan going into it to add some draft capital. And then it's like, now today I'm like, well, what the heck do they even know what they're doing? Like, it was a little bit odd.
Yeah, Roquan represented himself when he wanted $20 million a year. JT, is Roquan worth $20 million a year?
I don't think so. I mean, the guy's a really good inside linebacker, but you've seen in the league, the way you make money is rushing the quarterback or playing one-on-one as a corner. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I think he's still in that mindset like running backs were a couple years ago, but they still think they're worth that much, but nobody else thinks they're worth that much. So that's the tough part. I think it's a good move by the Bears. They had to make a move because they're not getting them back anyway. You might as well get what you can for them. Ravens have a history of being really solid on defense. They haven't been as good lately. I mean, as knowing all the Steelers fans, I know as soon as we saw the Claypool trade and the Roquan trade cross each other, like, why did we not do a combined move there where we take Roquan, give up Chase, and flip there? Because now I don't know if the Steelers would pay him 20, but the Steelers have had a pretty good history of linebackers, and I think they would probably pay him more than the Bears would. And if anybody that's watched the Steelers in the last 2 years, their absolute worst part of their defense, even though the corners have been bad, is their middle linebackers. I mean, Devin Bush is one of the worst middle linebackers in the league, and they've tried to sign multiple other guys to fill that spot, and they just haven't panned out. Miles Jackson's been solid this year, but not great. And if you could have put a Roquan Smith in there, I think it makes a huge difference for the Steelers. Like I said, once I saw the trades go across each other, I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't have just made that flop. Would have seemed a lot easier to me, but obviously I'm not a GM.
Yeah. All right, last one here. The Vikings get tight end TJ Hawkinson for a fourth round pick in 2024, a conditional fourth round pick. And then the Lions get some picks back, 2023 second, a 2024 third, and I think the injury to Irv Smith kind of prompted this move, but it's them. It's their chance to move on also. So, Adam, tell me about this trade, because it's really interesting. As a multiple league Hawkinson owner, how do I feel about him being on a new team like this?
Yeah, I have some Hawkinson as well. I want to say it's a big improvement, but the part that makes me second guess, like, I think he's going to a better offense. There's a little bit of a more condensed target share. Like, Adam Thielen is still got some meat on the bones, and obviously Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. So after those two guys, Hawkinson probably moves to 3 in the pecking order, but on a higher passing volume offense. What concerned me, I guess, and makes me pause a little bit, is you hardly see these interdivision trades where, like, the Lions are trading somebody like that to the Minnesota Vikings, where I think he had some good moments in Detroit, but obviously Detroit wasn't really that impressed about him. You don't see those interdivision trades because they don't want to see a player 2 times a year. It tells me that the Lions obviously weren't too impressed with TJ Hawkinson and aren't worried about him in the future if he stays in Minnesota.
That's you know, I was thinking the same thing. It's funny you said that, and I'm like, how does he go to a division rival when they see this guy all the time? And Hawkinson is a pretty good tight end, but is it just the lack of his ability to block, or is it his his he only had one good game this year, like one really good game this year. A lot of like minimal, less than double digit point games. And I don't know if that's Jared Goff or the Lions offense, or maybe the Lions rebuilding in a different way. Maybe they have picks that they already see a tight end in the draft next year that they want to implement, or maybe they do see that we're going to get we're going to. I don't know what their plan was, but it is what it is. JT, what do you think about that move?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting trade. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised there. I was really confused on the picks at first. It was like I couldn't wait. I was like, did they trade 4 picks for him? And then it was like, oh no, they traded him and got like I think they ended up getting the second and third and gave up like 2 fourths and Hawk.
Yeah.
Is that how that works? I saw a couple different reports.
2023 second, 2024
and
third. Yeah, so
and then the Vikings got Hawk in 2 fourths, right?
Fourth in 2023 and a fourth in 2024. Yes.
I don't think that's too bad of a trade if you're the Vikings. I mean, especially with Irv Smith going out, and you're a team that's, you're in your window now if you're the Vikings. I mean, this is your window right now, absolutely. So I don't mind them giving up 2/3, getting 2 fourths in return, and then because again, if Hawk balls out, they can re-sign him. If he doesn't, they can move on for him when he's done here. But I think for them, especially with Thielen's been a little banged up, hasn't as many catches. I think it's a huge upside for Hawk if he can get in the system and figure out some kind of consistency with Cousins. I feel like he's going to have a shot for a lot of get a lot of. They've had tight ends that have. They've been Mog. You got Conklin last year. He still put up some good games. Irv Smith put up some good games. So they've had average guys that played okay there. So I think if Hawk can come in and learn the system, I think he has a shot to really be even past Thielen as their number 2 guy in that system, go deep, and then look at a Hawk underneath. I think he does.
Talk to me, baby.
I like that spot for him. It was one of my favorite trades of the day as far as fantasy impact, as I thought a guy is like, if as a Hawk owner, I'm like, ooh, I kind of like this move for him. So we'll see how it works. But yeah, like he said, I agree with Adam that I think it's a good move for him. It's a good move for the Vikings, and I think it's nothing but upside. And they didn't give up too much in case he doesn't work out. I don't think they gave up too much for him.
I honestly think with Hawkinson, for fantasy purposes, where it'll make a difference. If he pans out, it's going to have to be in the touchdown category, just because for whatever reason, Kirk Cousins really likes Adam Thielen in the red zone. And since week 1, Justin Jefferson's only scored 1 touchdown, and it was a rushing touchdown. Like, he hasn't really been a factor for and that could be a fluke, that could be by design, that could be teams taking him away. But if TJ Hawkinson for rest of the season scores 6-8 touchdowns, I think that would make a big difference moving the needle, especially with the tight end landscape the way it is right now.
All right, I think I hit on all the trades there. That's a lot of stuff happened today. It was nice to see an actually active trade deadline in the NFL for a change. So I'll take it. And I got my home league guy here, John Daigle, who's also works for 4for4. Me, him, and Connor Allen and a couple other guys are in one of my home leagues with Andy Barons and them. So he writes the waiver wire article for 4for4. So again, I like to look at his stuff. He's a very smart guy. So he's got, for quarterbacks, Justin Fields, Andy Dalton, Taylor Heineke, running backs, Deontay Foreman, Kenyon Drake, Jeff Wilson from the Dolphins. Pacheco is the one on here who I'm kind of circling. They used Andy Reid supposedly went in the office and said, how do I get Isaiah Pacheco more involved in this offense and still make the offense flow? So he must really like Isaiah Pacheco. Deion Jackson from the Colts was a big pickup until Zach Moss came and gummed up the system here, but we'll see who's going to pan out. It is what it is. James Cook, it might take a couple weeks for him to pan out, it might take a couple weeks for anybody for Neon, your boy Neon, to make this offense work. So James Cook might still be usable for the next couple weeks, but these are pickups for this week. What do you think about these quarterback and running back pickups? Adam, go ahead.
Just for quarterback and running back.
Yeah, I haven't touched on receivers yet, but you could pick them up if you could talk about them if you want to.
I mean, I think the ones that I'm looking at John's list, and if anybody hasn't headed over to 4for4.com and read John Dingle's waiver wire article, it's definitely a must read. I mean, it's something I definitely look at each week, just because he's usually giving you some players that you can use this week, but then in future weeks as well. I highly recommend that. It's a great read.
Yeah.
I think Isaiah Pacheco is a decent stash. I'm more interested in some of these other guys that he listed here. We talked about with like the tight end position, Greg Dulcich, I think is super interesting. Just again, tight end is so bleak right now. And then I'm a little bit of a homer. I don't know if you guys can see my Purdue helmet here, but I've been a big Rondale Moore stan from when he was in college and now in the NFL. It's been nice to see him utilized a little bit more as a wide receiver instead of a gadget player. So I think he's also somebody that is a little bit interesting now. He's running more routes down the field, and his average depth of target isn't in negative 15 like it was last year. He's seeing more targets down the field and actually being used. He's another player I'm super interested in.
What a roller coaster, because I traded at the beginning of the season. I'm a Michael Carter stan. I love Michael Carter. I don't know what I traded away Rondale Moore to get Michael Carter. And then, they was before the draft, and then they picked up. I'm like, oh, you got to be shitting me. I thought Michael Carter was going to carry the load this year, and then Rondale Moore sucked. And I'm like, all right, this is great. Michael Carter's picking up, and then all of a sudden, it was not the Michael Carter show anymore. And then Rondale Moore's picking up steam, and I'm like, oh, and then now Michael Carter's on top of the game again, but Rondale Moore's doing pretty good. So it's kind of like, all right, this is kind of like an even. It wasn't as bad as I made it out to be, or made as I thought it was, but it is what it is. It's one of those trades I make that we'll fight. It's going to take years to figure out who won that trade. So as long as it's kind of even, I'm okay with that. But you had said you had talked about some of the other positions. I'll read off all the guys that John listed off. Wide receiver Romeo Doubs. We all saw that he's kind of finally starting to mesh with Aaron Rodgers. If you watch the game the other night, Aaron Rodgers was kind of like, he was super happy with the receivers. Dobbs is making some really nice catches. Josh Palmer, he might be. I've been trying to get Josh Palmer from guys for a while. He's been on IR, and nobody wants to move a guy when they're on their IR because it's a free space kind of thing. So now, if they don't have any room for him, I would try and trade for Josh Palmer as soon as possible. Rondale Moore, because he had a breakout game, he's on this, but nobody's giving up Rondale Moore if you're one of them Rondale Moore truthers. If you picked up Alec Pierce in your rookie drafts, depending on how much you spent on him, some guys got him in the third or fourth round, and for them, it's gravy in the Navy. They're not getting rid of him. So it's going to be really hard to pry Alec Pierce from one of the Alec Pierce owners unless you overpay. Terrace Marshall, somebody that I liked a lot earlier, really hasn't produced, but now he's got an opportunity. And then, like you said, Isaiah Likely for this week. I'm not sure what's going to happen after the bye week. It's probably back to the regular show. And then Greg Dulcich I drafted Greg Dulcich. He was my third rated tight end out of this rookie draft coming out. Tyler Conklin's another guy I like a lot, but he seems like a boom bust guy. He has real good games, then he gets lost, and good games and gets lost. So that's pretty much all of John's waiver wire targets this week. Anybody that you guys are not on this list, or anything else you want to elaborate on that I didn't touch on?
For me, the two rookie tight ends, Dulcich and Likely, are guys I'm looking for. If I don't already have them stashed, I'm actually pulling Dulcich off a taxi squad in quite a few leagues where I'm having problems with tight end injuries, or I need guys to play those tight end spots, or I'm having injuries. I'm pulling him off my league and playing him if I'm competing. Likely, I think he's a guy that I would stash even if Andrews comes right back. I just think with their problems at wide receiver, there's a good chance they can start playing a lot of two tight end. And people don't realize, but Likely, even though he's listed as a tight end, and technically he played tight end in college, I mean, when he was at Coastal Carolina, he was their number one wide receiver. I mean, he really did play wide receiver for them. He was mostly playing a slot guy, but he wasn't on the line blocking a lot, doing a lot of those things. So he's a guy I could see getting, as he gets more comfortable, them playing him and Andrews a little bit more together, and him actually having higher upside at the end of the year with the problems they have at wideout. So those would be the two big guys that I'm kind of looking at. I mean, at this point, you're taking a shot in the dark with a lot of these guys in the season, if they're even out on the waiver wire or not. QBs, if you can get a guy, go get him. Most super flex leagues, everybody is already they've been on a roster all year, and you're trying to trade for a guy or pick up a guy. If you got to go get a guy, Taylor Heineke's probably a decent guy to go get. He's not going to cost you a ton. People know Wentz is coming back. They know he's not winning the job. So if you need a guy over the next like 3-4 weeks, and we've shown he's capable in fantasy, he's not going to give you a lot of 35-point blow up performances, but he's a guy who gets you 17, 18, 20, 21. And I like him just because he throws the McLaren all the time. I mean, it's like his favorite guy. So that's why I like him. I mean, he makes Terry McLaren's value go way up these next couple of weeks because he's always looking for him, which I absolutely love as a fantasy owner. So he's a guy who can go probably steal, Ellinger. He's going to cost you more because he's younger. He might get a chance with the Colts long term. You don't know. It depends on how he plays down the stretch. But Heineke's a guy I can go out and get maybe trade a fourth for him, maybe a third if I have to, just to kind of hold me over if I've got injuries or bye weeks. But definitely the young tight ends, you'll get those guys. It usually takes 3 years for those guys to develop, and those guys are already showing signs in the rookie year. So I think their value is just going to go up, and up from here.
Yeah, another guy that's not on this list that I would trade for would be Daniel Bellinger. I know he's got an eye injury. If you're in a dynasty league, it's somebody. Yeah, I drafted him in probably I think 7 of my 8 dynasty leagues. And it's somebody that he was really producing, and that eye injury kind of sucked because it would be a perfect time for him to shine right now with a lack of depth on this team. It's just Wan'Dale Robinson, and it would have been him. So some people don't have IR spots, or he's not on IR right now, so they can't be. He's not. Nobody gets that cheat code out thing that you guys put in your dynasty leagues. You put out guys on the IR. That's garbage.
Well, that's what I say. If you got a team like where you can sit him and it's not going to hurt you because maybe your league doesn't have IR, but you've got a deep enough bench, you don't got to play him. Maybe it's a time to go trade for him. I've actually seen him going in as a second, third a player thrown in on trades in the last week or two. So a lot of people are like adding him in as that little extra piece, or like, I want just a bit more back from somebody. They're like, I'll take Bellinger because I can wait on him. So he's a guy I've seen a lot of people moving him in some trades as they're like trying to get him in there and look at his value. But I like him a lot. I mean, I was all over. I didn't have a lot of high draft picks in this last dynasty round of rookie drafts. So I was trying to load up on as many of these rookie tight ends as I could. And Bellinger was a guy I was high on. Kate Otten, I took a lot of him. Took a lot of Dolchich if I could. Likely was a guy I was a little more down on just because I thought he was undersized. I didn't know how he'd fit in the NFL, but he's looked really, really good for them. The one guy I kind of liked, I thought he was going to might see some time was Rucker at Ohio State. He's kind of been buried there for the Jets, but he's a guy I like a little more long term. But I liked a lot of those guys. I think, again, some of those guys have performed, but if you got guys in your league that haven't been paying a lot of attention, they haven't had huge games to where you can't go get them now. So if you need some younger tight ends or some guys to fill in here, this might be the time to try to go snag guy. If they're on the waiver, get them. Absolutely. If you're in a dynasty league, now you might be able to get him a decent price.
And who's the backup in Arizona? I can't. What's the kid's name? The backup behind Zach Ertz in Arizona. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now.
Out of Colorado State, McBride. Trey McBride. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So, he's another guy. Like, I liked him a lot coming out. He had the highest upside. Obviously, the worst situation playing behind Ertz. But he's a guy I like, too. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of guys, especially in Dynasty, don't like to wait on these rookie tight ends to develop. It takes them a couple years. So now is a good time when some of these guys haven't popped. People that get anxious don't want to sit on them. Hey, I'll give you a third rounder next year for that guy. Oh, well, he's just going to sit there on my bench anyway. I'll take the third round for him or whatever. I think, now's maybe not a bad time to jump, especially on teams that are maybe not as good. And they're like, that guy's not as good. I'd rather have the draft pick. You might be able to do something like that now.
Yeah, I'm in fact, I have no kickers, no defenses. And like most of my leagues are over 30 guys. So those guys aren't with 12 teams, 30-man rosters plus. So it's guys like that are kind of hard to dig out. Nobody's getting rid of them when it's tight end premium 0.75 or 0.20. So
two tight end, you're not going to get any of those guys probably right now. But if you're in like a 1.5 tight end premium, you got a shot at maybe trying to make a move for them. But I like those guys, as far as the future is concerned.
All right, Adam, you got stuck talking to us for an hour and 18 minutes here. So anybody else we left on here? Anything else that we forgot about? Anything you want to talk about?
Nope. I appreciate you guys having me. I think we covered all the waiver wire guys that I was interested in.
Yeah, we talk. This show's gone like 5 hours one time. It's gone like 45 minutes one time. So you're
Hey,
somewhere in the early. You're one of the fast shows, all right?
okay, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, just one more time on the way out. You want to tell everybody where they can find you at and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at @thereal_Adam_H, YouTube, Initial Evaluation Fantasy Football Podcast, TikTok, initial_eval_ff. I would say just head over to my Twitter account if you're looking for any of that content. And as always, head over to 4for4. Check out my weekly training room article. There's a lot of good content on that site. A lot of people smarter than me breaking down stuff, trying to give you the edge in both fantasy football and sports betting. So I highly recommend people head over there.
Yeah, Connor was my roommate. Connor Allen was my roommate at the expo.
Hell
He's
yeah.
a super smart guy, and
Yeah.
it's to see his stuff on 4-4 and see his podcast all the time and stuff. He's a super funny guy too. So
Yeah,
it's nice to see all these guys for 4-4 like making it happen. So
for sure.
yeah, JT's in the new starting home league that I got 8 guys in so far. He's in the league also. He's a little bit further south Illinois than us. So if you're moving back, I mean, a little more tempting. You could be on a podcast once in a while more with us for an hour or so, and we could just talk garbage all the time like we're doing now. This is fantastic. JT,
Yeah,
tell
man.
everybody where they can find you at.
Yep, easiest way to find me is at JT Orange on Twitter. You can feel free to tag me in any kind of trade polls, stuff like that. I try to give people my 2 cents of what I think about trade polls, or send it out to guys I know. I'll talk to you about 8 teams, sports betting, I'm all over that stuff as well. So I try to get it involved in a little bit of anything there. So yeah, always look me up there. Feel free to add me, chat me up, ask me questions. Give me a hard time about my team sucking. It's all good.
I'm John McGlynn. You can find me on a Twitter machine at John McGlynn75, and I do this commission evaluation show. It's by far my favorite hobby, fantasy football. I run a bunch of home leagues that I just love having some beers, watching football. I grew up watching football, then playing football, then watching my kids play football, coaching my kids playing football. Still watch it all the time. I'm glued to the TV on Red Zone. I'm glued to TV Thursday and Monday night, and my kids are in fantasy football. I got my wife to play fantasy football this year, so it's just kind of it's a nice hobby. It's supervised. It's kind of like you watch these Netflix shows or you watch football or you do a little bit of both, and it all ends up nice as long as your wife's okay with it. And she's like Adam. You said your wife is one of the people that kind of joined the fantasy football train too, or likes football a lot. It's such a when you guys can talk about that, have something else in common, it just brings so much more relationship. So thanks everybody for watching the commissioner evaluation show, and I had a blast. I hope you guys had a blast, and we'll try and keep this show rolling. But thanks everybody for joining in today. Talk to you later.